Hello and welcome back to another episode of Only a Bag, a travel podcast. I am your host, Nathaniel Meller, and with me, as always,
It's me, Darcy Melton.
welcome back, Darcy.
Thank you. Welcome back, Nathaniel.
How are we doing on this lovely Monday? I want to say morning, but that would just be a lie because it's 3 o'clock in the afternoon.
Yes, it is Monday afternoon for us. It's good. I'm good. I've recovered now from my giggles a few moments ago. And I'm serious now.
Ooh, we're in serious podcast mode, everyone, and we are ready to, I would say make history, but honestly, I don't know, make something for sure.
Make some chit chat.
Make some chit chat.
We're going to talk about Cinque Terre.
Cinque Terre, quite famous, I think.
It is.
I mean, everybody seems to have heard of it.
Yeah, in some way or another.
Yeah.
I
I
mean-
didn't hear. I think, did you hear of it before coming?
Yeah, I heard of it, but I had no idea what it was.
Okay. Because I think I thought it was in France for a long time for some reason. Because it's supposed to be on the
understandable.
Riviera, the Italian Riviera. I assumed it was the French Riviera. So
Did people say that?
yeah, there was like,
Oh.
it's the Italian Riviera. And I just
Oh,
assumed,
okay.
like, when people say Riviera, I'm thinking French every time. So I'm just
Yeah.
thinking, so I was like, oh, Cinque Terre, France. And then I was like, it's in Italy?
I mean, it does look quite a bit like the
This
southern
French influence.
French.
Yeah. I can see that.
Coastline.
Yeah, that makes sense. Before we get into it, of course, as always, we're going to do a little fun advertisement. So if you don't want to hear this, just go skip ahead a couple seconds. I don't know. We're usually over pretty quickly. But today we're going to talk about trusted house sitters. That is essentially what we have used to explore a lot of Europe, specifically a lot of Italy. But essentially it's a house sitting website. And if you don't know what house sitting is, we have a couple of lovely episodes on that. But it's essentially you go and you stay at somebody's house and take care of their dog, their cat, their pets, their
Plants.
plants. It's for free. Like, you don't pay the house owner, they don't pay you.
Right.
So you get like a place to stay for free, and they get somebody who loves and takes care of their animals. There's a sign up link below for trusted house sitters. You might notice it is a little expensive. It's about like 100 and I want to say 50 or 60
Something like that.
for the membership for the year. And while it is a pricey, because I think both you and I always find it a little like, oh, that's
Yeah, every time we purchase it, it's a big oof. But then we end up being really grateful for it because it saves us money in the long run, where we're staying at people's homes and we get to stay in a place a lot longer than if we were paying 100 euros a night for a hotel room.
Exactly. And I think especially with trusted house sitters, we've done a couple of repeats. Like we go back to the same person's house year after year. And I think even we've mentioned in our Rome episodes, we house sit in Rome. And so it's like $150 there has gotten us 4 years in Rome. So it's an amazing, like,
And a friend.
And a
Well,
friend.
2 friends, because Charlie the cat is also our friend.
so 2 friends and 4 years in Rome. So it's one of those things as while it is an expensive,
Initial endeavor, sort of.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it has been 100% worth it for us. So if you want to support the channel and if you're curious about house sitting and you want to start looking around, there's a link below that will link you directly to the looking in Italy. But they have a wonderful map view so you can look all around Europe. You can sort by time, you can sort by length of stay. Super easy, super straightforward. And we hope that we want to encourage more people to house sit because it seems like a really fun way to travel simply because it's, more sustainable and it feels like you're part of a community. And
Yeah, we love it. I think
Yeah.
it's my favorite way to travel.
yeah, and as always, we would love if you rate this episode wherever you're listening to it, wherever you can rate it. I keep saying, like, rate it at these places, and then I'm like, I don't know if you can rate it on those places.
Yeah, I feel like, follow, review, rate, whatever is available to you and you have the time to do, we would love.
That would be amazing. And to the few people who have already left us reviews on Spotify,
Thank you.
We just saw it the other day, and we don't get like notifications. I happen to look for our podcast because, I'm a little curious what it looks like on Spotify.
No narcissism here.
No narcissism here. This is just pure professionalism. And no, we both really appreciate the 3. I mean, we're trying to turn this into something fun and exciting and creative and bigger than it currently is. And it's, we're just really pumped. Like the 3 reviews is, I don't know, but kind of, we're both over the moon. So,
Yeah.
And thank you for everyone who's following us and for I want to say it's like 14 people who every single time we put out a podcast episode, we almost in the first couple hours we get 14 listens.
Yeah, you're our bread and butter.
Yeah,
like,
so
it's going to sound ridiculous, but you're the reason we're here
We're
because
doing
otherwise
this.
we would just be talking into the void.
So to those 14 listeners out there, you know who you are. Thank you again so much for listening. And so without further ado, on to Cinque Terre.
Yes, which I might say wrong somewhere in the episode because I always call it Cinque Terre, which is not what it is. It's Cinque Terre, meaning 5 lands.
Yeah.
So, and if you look at it written down, I think we've said this before, but CI in Italian is the ch sound. So that's why it's cinque and not cinque.
Yeah, or not Cinque. And I think it's hard. I mean, we at some point we were talking about doing like maybe a little episode on just some very basic Italian, but I think, I mean, other people maybe do it better. It's hard. It's one of, not like our Italian's not amazing basically. But yeah, Cinque, the
passable,
CH
but yeah.
is the big one, just so you don't sound like a total, or Cinque Terre. A lot of people say Cinque Terre, like thinking it's like French, like there's like a Cinque Terre.
Yeah, it's not that.
But it's in Italian, you pronounce every like letter, every syllable. So Cinque Terre.
Yeah.
But yeah, so there's five lands, five cities,
so it's
basically,
five towns. Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to just should I name the towns?
Yeah,
Going
might as well.
from top down, just so we know. Yeah, whenever I heard about Cinque Terre or knew of it, I didn't realize.
Terre right there.
I know Cinque Terre. Whenever I first heard about Cinque Terre, I didn't understand that it was 5 places.
Yeah, right. I know it has the name five, but it almost sounds like it's just one.
It's just a place.
Yeah, because so many places in Italy, or even in the rest of the world, are named like, 7 rivers, and you go there and you're like, that's one river with like 6 streams. That's not 7 rivers.
Yeah, so but it is actually 5 distinct places. Okay, so from the top down, north down, there's Monte Rosso al Mare, Vernazza, and then those are the 2 oldest towns of Cinque Terre. And then moving south, there's Cornelia and Manarola and Rio Maggiore.
And then those are both sandwiched, not those both, I guess, all 5 of those are sandwiched by Levanto in the north, and La Spezia, more or less, I say sandwiched in the south. But basically, there's like, those are the 2 kind of bigger towns on either end of the north and the south.
And the most accessible, because there's to the south of Rio Maggiore, which is the farthest town in the south of Cinque Terre. There's, what is it, Porto Venere?
Yeah, there's Porto Venere, which is kind of, there's a if you look on Google Maps or even some pictures from La Spezia along this kind of cove, along the kind of coast, basically. I say cove because it's quite, La Spezia is very much set back in the sense that it's in a cove, it's a natural cove. And on, I guess, the peninsula is Porto Venere. But along the entire coast there's little towns along the way, kind of like the Amalfi Coast, where it's just like there were once different villages that would supply, I guess, La Spezia. And then now they've kind of sort of, you can kind of tell on Google Maps that like they keep building. So it's like, oh, there's the old town, and then there's like a smattering of buildings, and then there's another old town and a smattering of buildings.
But those, it's my understanding that those towns, and then is it Porto Venere? Am I saying
I think
that
so,
right?
Porto Venere.
Is not that easily accessible from Cinque Terre. Basically, your jumping off spot is La Spezia.
Yes, yeah, especially in there is if you look at like a lot of articles on like how to go to Cinque Terre like on a budget or cheaply, and you might even find an article like that in the description one day when I finally write it, depending when you actually listen to this. But one of the big ideas is to stay in La Spezia because it's a city, so it's a little bit cheaper. There's a lot more like accessibility, and some people find
and there's just more places to stay there.
Yeah,
bigger.
Exactly. But some people find that staying in Porto Venere is a good option because it has the Cinque Terre feel. It has that same sort of like they call it Ligurian style, where it's just sort of these like tall,
like the colorful houses.
Yeah,
on a
it's
cliff
like
situation.
Ligurian tall houses or something is like the name for it. But it's these just tall houses, all pastel color, all along the cliff, and it's beautiful. It's like not Cinque Terre, but it's gorgeous. So there's this idea that if you stay there, even if you go to Cinque Terre for a day trip, which is kind of a city bus, and then you switch to a train, you're coming back to still quite a beautiful little town rather than like La Spezia, which is nice. It's probably gorgeous. We've seen pictures, and we went through it for all of 20 minutes, but it's not the same small, cozy, intimate feel.
Yeah, it's definitely a city rather than a smaller town.
So that's kind of to give you a background, like a little basis on them. And while there are 5 different towns, they are all a little bit like, they have their own little differences, I guess. So it's like they're not like 5 carbon copies, I guess. If that makes sense.
I think they look like that in photos sometimes, but photos can be deceiving because most of the photos that you're going to see of Cinque Terre are of Rio Maggiore in this one spot. And we know because we went there and I took that classic photo. And I mean, it's great. It's beautiful, but it has a really great view of the Ligurian style houses, which in my research today, I could be wrong about this, but I read today that that was a like 1970s, not necessarily the painting of the houses, but the showing tourists images of these beautiful houses along the coast was like a 1970s tourist grab, essentially. Like kind of before that, they were more authentic fishing villages than they are now, which isn't to say they're not authentic, but
because I'm curious about like also the because color photography, basically being big
good
around
point.
it. So if it's
Picked up in the 70s, yeah.
if it's like a big sort of like these look beautiful in black and white, but then in color they look a bit.
Otherwise, you got to see a painting of it. I guess.
Well, also I think that Italy, like a lot of different places, even where we live, it's really famous to have like it's kind of yellow on the bottom and red on the top, basically, of a building, like of a floor, or if it's like 4 floors, you do 2 yellow and then 2 red. So there are these in different towns, in different cities, in different regions. There are these classic color combinations, and they are often quite like the yellow is quite pale. Maybe I would call it, maybe it's pastel, and the red is quite earthy. So close up, that's beautiful. From far away, there's a tendency for it to kind of look a little bit drab, like a little bit sort of.
Depends on where you are, because I think sometimes we've been in towns where the painted buildings are quite punchy, like more punchy than like, I mean, a little bungalow in the U.S. would be.
Sure, no, I think it just depends though, because it is, I mean, while a painting house does have a historical significance in a lot of Italy, and a lot of it has to do with religion or just sort of the colors of the town.
Yeah, like city pride.
Yeah, so it's not like just, maybe it's, I'm curious if what they changed it from into the pastel colors, or if they were just like, no, it was just stone before, just stucco before.
And they might have been painted, but just what I saw was that tourism picked up.
And they thought,
in the
like,
70s
let's like,
because they were showing people pictures of these houses, essentially.
And that makes perfect sense. Like if you ever go there, if you see pictures, I mean, it's so easy to find those like super hyper saturated like HDR kind of photos too, where it's just unrealistically look like color saturated, I guess. But they are quite a vibrant color. I mean,
they are vibrant in real life, for sure.
They're beautiful.
Put extra HDR on them for no reason, in my opinion. But
no, and I was also going to mention too that like they are also, the Amalfi Coast is kind of the same way. It's I think anytime you're dealing with a coastal town, you're talking about damp, you're talking about humidity, you're talking about salt and seawater. So these aren't like perfect. Even though they're painted, you get close and you realize like, oh, it's been repainted a number of times, or it's been patched, or there's cracks, or there's mold, or there's...
That's most of Italy too. I mean, they're just old buildings that have been battered and worn. And
there's no real, I mean, short of like tearing things down, which is not something that anyone wants to do. It's and
they're not made of wood either, so it's not like you can repair a side of your house in a bit of wood. I mean, it's stone and versions of cement. And
I think one thing I want to mention before we kind of talk about the differences of these towns, and then we're also going to talk about things like some of our restaurants, some food, some places like pasticerias. I said restaurants, but I don't actually think we like any. I mean, there are good restaurants there, but it's there are also a lot of bad ones, and we happen to go to the ones that were not as good. But that being said, before we did want to mention that if like where we stayed, there was nothing remotely resembling a easy way up 4 flights of stairs in Rio Maggiore.
Right.
The entire, like, even where you walk around, it's not even stone, it's sloped. It's so basically, if you have any sort of like a walking mobility devices like wheelchairs or crutches.
It's really not very accessible.
Yeah.
I will say we haven't been to Monte Rosso, but in my research, I did find that it is the flattest of the 5 towns, and you can see in pictures that there are parts that are quite flat. So if you have any mobility issues and you really want to go to Cinque Terre, that might be an option, is Monte Rosso.
Okay, that's good, because that's something that is, I think we're always basically a little bit aware of it. And I think when your mom came, and it was just sort of like, I think you and I just are not aware of just elevation often, because we live in a hilltop town. So it's sort of like when you see a hill, we're just like, I'm not even considering it. But like when you're with somebody who has not walked up and down hills for the last couple of months or a couple of years, it's a little bit like, oh, this is difficult to get. I can see that this is all, stairs and whatnot. However, that being said, from like the train station into the town, there's a tunnel, and that's flat, it's new, it's smooth. from where like that sort of there's a tunnel basically, like I mentioned, and where that lets out, I believe there's an elevator up to the town. I mean, it's part of the. Basically, originally it was like you would have walked up and down these stairs. It's only about like maybe 20 feet of difference, if that. But they do have an elevator, like kind of between the harbor is what they call it, and then the town, which is they're touching and they're about 5 feet away from each other. And then even past that, you can take like a wheelchair or something like that up into a landing below the. There's a castle in Rio Maggiore that's beautiful, famous for its sunset views. We'll mention in a second. But there is an elevator there that'll go up to the level of the castle, not to the castle directly, but to a place where it's flat. So if you have any trouble
You do have to pay for the elevator though, right?
You do. It's like privately run, I think.
It's like a euro or €1.50 or something.
Yeah, it's a privately run elevator, I think, because it's just somebody sitting outside at a table collecting money. Yeah. And they give you a ticket. I mean, they have a receipt, the whole 9 yards. It's not like, it's not some kid who's just stealing money. It's like there's this whole system in place.
Elevator business.
Yeah, so it's something to just, it's keep in mind that Rio Maggiore at least does have some types of will help, I guess, for getting up and down the elevation, because otherwise
there are some things that are accessible, but it just depends, I feel like, on your level of adventure. I would not recommend it if you don't enjoy walking or if you have any mobility issues. I mean, like even the place that we stayed with my mom, tiny little staircase, and it went up like what, four flights?
Yeah, no, and that's the
intense
thing though. It's, I mean, the width of the staircase itself wasn't more than 2.5 feet, maybe.
It was small.
I mean, it was to the point where it's like going up with bags. I had to be sideways, one bag in front, one bag in back.
And the steps run even. And I mean, it's a fun story for us.
Oh, it's beautiful. It's just.
But if you're not us, it might not be as fun. But just to restate, like, Monte Rosso does have more flat area. It does have several hotels and B&Bs and guest houses. So.
And to be clear, by the Monte Rosso and then Monte Rosso al Mare.
Yes, sorry. When I say Monte Rosso, I mean Monte Rosso al Mare.
Okay,
yes.
Very cool. Just want to make sure.
That's a good point. Thank you.
So do we want to talk about the differences of the towns then? Or not even the differences, just sort of like some specialities?
I kind of want to go, like one by one and just kind of pull out little bits and pieces about each place.
Beautiful. Let's do it. Where do you want to start?
Let's start at Monte Rosso al Mare.
Sounds beautiful to me. Okay.
So this is the northmost town in Cinque Terre. Like I said, it's the flattest of all of them. And what that means is that all of the others are on a cliff/hill. So it is the flattest, but also it's not like a completely flat plain. So there are
elevation differences.
Yes, exactly. It's one of the oldest. So Monte Rosso al Mare and then Vernazza are the two oldest towns in Cinque Terre. And it's the largest geographically compared to the other four, but it's not the highest inhabited. So there's less population density.
And that's something we noticed. And even when you look up, basically, I think in the previous episode, we talked about, the day trips from Florence episode, we talked about you can, in theory, make a day trip from Cinque Terre, to Cinque Terre from Florence. It's difficult. You're going to spend all day on the train, but like if you're not going to visit it and you're not going to be anywhere near there, it is possible. And we mentioned Rio Maggiore being the biggest. Apparently, it's not as big as Monte Rosso al Mare.
Geographically.
Yeah, but it is more dense. And honestly,
it has the highest population, right?
I believe it has the highest population of all the towns. Mixed with the fact that a lot of what I was reading on like Reddit and other sort of forums and people's comments and stuff like that, everyone who's been between the two, Monte Rosso al Mare and Rio Maggiore, have felt that Rio Maggiore is much more like vibrant and active and like things are happening. And even when we walked around, we saw like a preschool, we saw a bunch of things, it's like there's clearly, it's still a town. And that's something that like, it's hard, I think, for a lot of people, maybe not hard for a lot of people, but it can, there's an impression when you get to places like, I think, Cinque Terre, and even to a lesser degree, like Florence and obviously now Venice, there's this impression that it's like an amusement park. Like, well, I'm paying to be here and I'm paying for this and I'm paying for that. But it's like, it's hard, but people still absolutely do live there. They still work there. They still have kids going to school there. There's still graveyards there, cemeteries. They still, carry out processions and they still carry out funerals. So it's like, it's a vibrant life happening. And that's just something to keep in mind. Like I think a lot of people there are really excited by tourism because it's just fun. But at the same time, you will definitely see people or meet people or hear about people who are less excited about tourism.
Yeah.
Just because that is the sort of dichotomy of tourism. Like even where we're from in America, it's 50-50. Some people love it and some people can't wait until it's the middle of winter when there's no tourists around. So
Yeah.
I think that's just something to keep in mind is it's not like a perfectly preserved historic town that is only populated by people who have
running
a lot of
the sites and
yeah,
tourist food booths. Yeah, it's
exactly.
not that.
It is still an active town, if that makes sense. Sorry. So Monte Rosso.
Yeah, so Monte Rosso al Mare, that was pretty much it.
There is also the Monte Rosso Giant, which I don't know if you
What?
read this. Yes, it's fascinating. It's not that old. It's only about it's about 100 years old, and it's a sculpture that's supposed to hold up, I believe it's a terrace of someone's house in Monte Rosso al Mare. Really interesting. It's just carved from rock.
What, is it like a human shape?
Yeah, it's a shape of a giant, like a human giant.
What?
And it was damaged in World War II during bombing, and then damaged again in '66, I think, from like a storm or waves have damaged it. But there's this really, it's just kind of this fascinating. I don't know how far off the beaten path it is, but it's just one of those things that when you type in Monte Rosso and you're looking at what to do there, it comes up. It's basically it's like someone's really nice sculpture that holds up their terrace, and people visit it because it's just strange and weird. And
Yeah, I would totally visit that. That sounds crazy.
yeah, right. So that's just something if you're considering like what are we gonna do in Monte Rosso al Mare. But it also has one of the two sandy beaches.
Yes, so it has the largest sandy beach. Most of the beaches, fun fact, of the 5 towns in Cinque Terre, there are only 4 beaches, or 4 sea access points. So Monte Rosso has the largest sandy beach. I think it's Cornelia also has a small beach, which is sandy, but most of the beaches are going to be pebble beaches, which I quite like. I mean, it's a little more painful, I guess, walking around, but you don't get sand stuck in every part of yourself and your shoes and everything.
I will say I think a stony beach, not like small tiny stones, but like the big stones, is nicer for like when you're just going in for an hour, because sometimes it is the washing off of sand that takes an hour.
Yeah.
So it's nice when you're just like, I'm just gonna dip in there, I'm gonna come out, and there's like, oh, there's no sand. This is actually
Every time
pleasant.
we go to a sandy beach, I think everybody does this, but I'll like go wash off my feet, come back and put on my shoes. My feet are sandy. Go wash off my feet in the sea again, and then my shoes and my feet are sandy. I just repeat this like a Groundhog Day. I do every time we're at the beach of trying to wash off my feet and then getting them re-sandy. It's a bit ridiculous.
Very quickly on the Giant, by the way, it is actually concrete and iron, not stone. And it was built for basically a wealthy Monte Rossini family that apparently returned from Argentina with a fortune. But it's just kind of a neat little like,
cool.
Yeah, it's right on the coast. It's a neat little.
It's got like an atlas holding up the globe, the Earth sort of feel.
But it's just like somebody holding up some wealthy like patio.
Wow. Interesting.
Monte Rosso, by the way, is also, from what I was finding out, for those of you who are interested in the beach, it is one of the more established with amenities, I guess. There's the showers there, there's changing rooms, tanning, but it's a whole 9 yards going on there. Versus like Rio Maggiore, for instance, only has one beach and it's free and there's no amenities at all. It's just
you and the beach.
You and the beach, yeah. And in the same sense, we talked about, again, trying to like walking to places like this without like with mobility devices like wheelchairs. It's very difficult to get to the beach in Rio Maggiore because it's a little path that they carved along the side of the cliff
And stairs.
And it's rocky and it's kind of not the easiest anyway. So if you are looking to go to swimming, Monte Rosso al Mare should be the easiest. As you mentioned, it's flat. It also has it should be basically just the easiest. Plus, again, there are like beaches. What am I talking about? Beach chairs, as well as the little showers afterwards.
Yeah.
So if you're looking for beach time and you're going to Cinque Terre, Monte Rosso al Mare is probably your best bet.
I agree.
So what's next on the list?
So moving south is Vernazza, which is another one of the 2 oldest towns. And I know I heard from someone whenever I learned about Cinque Terre that no cars are allowed anywhere. I don't know if that was ever true. That does not hold true in many of the towns. You can definitely drive around, and especially locals do have cars.
I was gonna say, I think it's only locals and then food delivery. I don't think,
Really? I
yeah,
thought tourists could drive into some of them.
definitely not Rio Maggiore. You have to park outside.
Okay. Okay,
Only,
so maybe that was a half true thing that I heard.
yeah, the only people coming in are residents and delivery vans.
Okay, so there are residential cars and delivery vans in many of these towns, but Vernazza has no traffic.
Apparently.
Yeah,
And I say
that's
apparently
what
because,
we've
again,
learned.
delivery vans, like,
So they have to have something, but
you would think. I mean, because even just as simple stuff as, like, I mean, if you've ever worked in a hotel or a restaurant or anything like that, like, they're coming in with food, they're coming in with new towels, new aprons, new everything.
That's a good point. Research says that there's no traffic there, no vehicles are allowed, but you're right, there must be something.
Otherwise, it's just sort of, you're paying these guys to, like, spend an hour coming down a cliff with, one little dolly at a time full of food. But that's something to just keep in mind is for all of these towns, though, if you were going to rent a car, just go ahead and assume you're not going to be able to get it into the town. Like, rent a car in Tuscany, rent a car in Liguria in general, but then maybe not for Cinque Terre.
Yeah, and once we've gone over each of the towns, we can talk about like, getting there by train and everything too, because there is basically, don't turn off this episode yet if you're like, ugh, I have to rent a car. You don't. There is train access and there are shuttle buses.
Oh, yeah, for sure. No, if you are not renting a car, there's tons of transportation to
Yes.
Cinque Terre.
So Vernazza was named, what is it you told me earlier? One of the most beautiful Italian villages or something?
Yeah, it's like there's association of beautiful Italian villages, and I think you have to be like nominated as a beautiful Italian village to be part of the association, and Vernazza is nominated as such. Part of it has to do with, though, it's apparently wealthier than some of the other ones. In the
wealthier than the people who have a stone person holding up their
I don't know what that's about.
palazzo. Okay.
So I think that might play into it, but also it has like the I think for much longer than the other ones, there was still, or maybe even now, there's still an active fishing village. So that plays into it.
So that's a good point. Thank you for saying that. Monte Rosa and Monte Rosa sul Mare, Al Mare, and Vernazza both are quite famous for being fishing villages, and they still have a vibrant fishing culture, is my understanding. And during sardine season, there's just a big old catch of local sardines. It's a popular, very hyper local food.
Okay, well that's actually good to know. I wonder then if there's like because here in the South there's tons of festivals around food, especially around like certain catching times or harvesting times. So I'm willing to bet there's obviously some sort of festival around that. But
yeah, I'd be curious.
Yeah, that could be fun if you like sardines, anchovies, sardines.
Ooh. I'm gonna say sardines. And
say sardines because I think here in the South a lot of anchovies, but like you don't really get sardines anywhere. Like everywhere here we find like little tiny fish. Point. You almost always get the anchovies, the acciughi as they call them here. So moving on down, Corniglia.
Yes, so Corniglia is the only town in Cinque Terre to not have beach access. So it's up on a mountain. Others of the towns are up on a cliff, which essentially like drops off into the ocean. But Corniglia is not on the sea. You can see the ocean from there, but you cannot access it. But what that means is that it has the fewest tourists because everybody's going to the towns that have beach access. But it's also the hardest to get to. So essentially, when you arrive there by train or I believe by car also, you have to take a shuttle bus up into the town or walk the almost 400 steps up into town. And I believe it's also the smallest geographically of all the towns. So I just think it's fascinating. We haven't been.
Yeah, and a lot of people seem to like it. They find it like quite charming, quite small, quite intimate. But it's also it just kind of, I mean, you can't go wrong with it kind of thing.
Yeah.
It's.
I think it in my research, and I would also guess that it is the most authentic of them remaining because fewer tourists go there. And there are probably fewer people moving in from the outside because there's no beach access. So it's just maintained its small town ness. Its authenticity.
And I think a lot of places are. I mean, maybe not a lot of places in Italy, but there are some that now that I think Italy is realizing that tourists don't necessarily want modernity.
Yeah, they want authenticity.
Yeah, and I think it's like, I mean, just because we're in the South where there's a bunch of beautiful tiny little villages, and then like around the tiny little village is this like suburb, or it's this giant shopping center, or it's something just like not completely remotely in line with the village. So it's interesting because it's like it's clear that people haven't really left Cinque Terre to go to other places, and that's happened pretty much everywhere else. I mean, so whether it's because it's still popular, there's always a job you can find in tourism, or whether it's like one thing I'd be curious to is also how expensive these houses are for locals, and if there's anything like in place for like locals buying houses versus locals just being locals to that town, not necessarily into Italy.
Yeah, like managing price gouging and what's it called when things get more expensive?
Oh, inflation.
Inflation.
Yeah,
yes.
No, exactly.
Yeah. So that's Cornelia. Should we talk about Manarola? Is the next town?
Tiny little town.
Yeah, I don't have that much to say about it.
All I know is there's a
cliff jumping.
Cliff jumping. Yeah. I mean, there's also a little tiny beach, but not like
little beach.
But it's basically it's just like stone or concrete.
It is, yeah.
It's just
like
they basically they paved a slab on some rocks, and you go swimming from there into the water. Which is, if you're from Italy, or if you're from Croatia, Greece, it's quite typical in the Mediterranean that like is a bunch of rocks, and then one of the rocks people paved or stoned or something over to make it flat.
It's like a permanent dock.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. It's a permanent dock.
Not that people dock their boats there, but just to give you a mental image
of what it looks like. Yeah. But apparently it's all these kind of cliffs around it because it's up on a cliff, and it's quite popular to jump off into the water from certain spots. Again, I just want to throw it out there. Take this with your grain of salt. Take your own lives in your hands. I don't want to suggest you should do this. We have not.
We have no safety information on that activity.
Seems kind of dangerous, but also good luck. Seems beautiful.
Yeah.
So last but not least,
Rio Maggiore, which we have the most information about because we've actually been there.
Yeah, that's pretty good. Yeah, I mean that's it.
Yeah. So you covered the bases earlier, saying that it's a very steep town.
Super steep.
The houses likely that you'll be staying in, tiny little staircases. I mean, they're old houses, and they've been chopped up into rooms.
Then there are, if I may interrupt, there are newer. I don't want to say hotels and give the impression of a hotel, but palazzos or villas turned into a hotel, which should have more accessibility features, so to speak. It should have more flat areas. It should have more elevators, things like that. And they do a pretty good job. There's all these paths around town, and we'll talk about them in just a second here. And they do a pretty good job making sure the paths are quite flat. Although they are stone mortared together, they are quite flat.
Yeah, it's not like an uneven brick situation.
Yeah.
Usually.
Oh, sorry, I should say, yeah, that's right. Flat in the sense of not uneven, not flat in the sense of elevation. It is up and down.
Yes, it is very much change in elevation all over Rio Maggiore.
But at least it's not completely uneven stones and then rickety stuff.
Yeah.
So how do we Rio Maggiore? We have the most experience. We've covered, getting around. Basically, we've covered. It has a pebbly, rocky beach.
Well, okay. So the thing that I guess maybe I didn't realize going there is that for visiting purposes, I should say, not for living there, but for visiting purposes, it is mostly one street.
Yes, I think it's a good point. Yeah. Great point.
So there's a main street. I would call it. No, it's not officially that, but there's a main street. Lots of restaurants, little shops. Grocery stores. We stayed on the main street, and so from there you can go down to the
harbor,
harbor, and then going from the harbor you can go up and around the mountain, sort of. It's a short walk.
To the left.
To the left. To get to the Pebble Beach that we were talking about. And there's also over there's a what would you call it? The boating point, where the boat
it's one of those permanent docks,
water
basically.
Taxi,
Yeah, it was a ferry more than a water taxi.
It's a ferry.
but because you can't bring it into the harbor, essentially it's just this, again, concrete slab out on the rock somewhere that they dock. Not even dock. I mean, they sort of just
gently put the boat there for a few minutes.
Yeah, and they stick the little metal little walkway on it, and then there's a lot of bouncing back and forth.
Yeah.
There's a lot of moving, and they just basically tell you good luck, and then you hop off and hop back on, and that's supposed to take you up on the 5 different towns.
Yeah, so that's over there. The beach is over there, and that's all accessible from the little harbor at the where the street essentially ends at the sea, and then going up from that street. You can access, there's a big church, there's the elevator that Nathaniel was talking about, and then continuing up from there is like the sunset point.
There's a castle, there's basically like
Yeah.
Castello de Viramaggiore or something like that, and it's just a castle. You can go into the castle, I do believe it's like a museum, and then in front there's a bunch of benches. It's just gorgeous. I mean, you're looking at people's farms just below you. It's all terraced, so you're just seeing
It's a
like
really lovely sunset
yeah,
point.
it's just grapevines. It's citrus trees, because Liguria is quite famous for a lot of citrus. If you've ever had quinoto, it's a Ligurian drink. So it's a very like beautiful, just all green. You can see the mountains. You can see Matarola in the distance. I believe you can see Genoa, just of how it curves around, and then you just get a gorgeous sunset in front of you, which is, I mean, unbeatable kind of thing, because it's a little walk up there for sure. But it beats the heck out of everywhere. Basically everywhere else is like swarmed with people.
Yeah.
Because there's even a little bar on the way to the beach that's on the kind of pathway. But the issue is, of course, when you're sitting, you're not sitting along the wall looking at the sunset. You're sitting on the other side of the walkway, which means that people are walking in front of you, but also means that people are stopping and taking photos. So I'm like, you spend all this money to be at a bar for a sunset view, because that's one of the things they advertise, only for a wall of people to be in front of you.
Yeah.
And I think we only spent maybe 2 nights in Rio Maggiore.
Yeah, it was a very short stay.
Yeah, because it was just one of those things. I mean, it's expensive, and it's also quite tiny. I mean, genuinely, unless you're gonna try to see all the whole up and down the coast kind of thing, it's not that important. I mean, not important. It's beautiful. Stay there, relax, have take some time off.
But I think like compared to Florence, which we've talked about, like the Uffizi takes an entire day to see sometimes if you're diligent about seeing art. I think you could spend a lot more time as a tourist in somewhere like Florence than you would in Rio Maggiore.
Absolutely. And before we talk too much about like food and stuff, I did want to throw in some quick notes on the hiking trails. I thought, because that's basically the other thing they're quite famous for, is of course the fact that you can walk from one town to the other.
Yeah. Are we talking about food just in Rio Maggiore, or are we talking about food overall?
I guess just Rio Maggiore, because that's really the only place we know food.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's do food first in Rio Maggiore, and
just
then
so it's less confusing.
that makes sense. I like that.
Okay.
We have a couple suggestions, and again, we spent only a very short amount of time there, but we did. I think part of it is when we like something, we will go back to it like at least 1 or 2 other times to kind of just get a second opinion, I guess. If that's something, it's like, was it just were we just super hungry when we tried it the first time? Were we just sort of enamored by being, in this location?
And you and I do try. We're lucky that we travel in a pair and we like the same foods generally.
Yeah.
Because we can have a small something to split at a
Absolutely,
restaurant or a
yeah.
little street food place and try many places splitting one thing, and then go back to places that we like.
And I think that, especially, so like Genoa is famous for their version of focaccia. I say their version because also Puglia has a very famous version of focaccia as well. And they're kind of similar. We talked about, I guess, in Florence, the schiacciata, the bread here. Something like schiacciata.
Schiacciata.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So they all have that kind of famous puffy flatbread. But Genoa, Genoa being not just the city, but the sort of region, the historical region, if you will, of Genoa, famous for its pesto and basil. It also is famous for its focaccia. So that was one thing that we went up and down and just pretty much tried every single like focaccia place and just was like, can I get a small piece of this? I think we almost always tried the onion one, because it seems like onion's a weird one here in Italy because it's not always a classic flavor like in Tropea with the Tropean onions. But like a lot of the other places, it's like onions on pizza sometimes, but it's usually...
Yeah, where we have been, you don't often see onions on pizza.
Yeah, despite the fact that, honestly, onions on pizza is phenomenal. I mean, especially when it's grilled or whatever, like sautéed. There's one in Naples we like, the pizzeria, that it's 2 or 3 different kinds of onions on a pizza, which is kind of phenomenal. So we do try the onion, and that seems to be a classic flavor. I wish I knew more about it. I wish I knew if they were like
in Vino Maggiore and Cinque Terre,
or just in general. I'm curious if general it's like a if they grow.
Oh, but in Genoa versus Italy, because in Italy, onion on a pizza is not that classic.
Not that classic, not that common. So we did do a lot of culinary research, I think, and we found a couple places that we liked. And when we say we liked them, it's hard to, I mean, we're not like Lonely Planet, I guess. We're not TripAdvisor. So it's like better than average. Like average is like we can make focaccia, and Darcy and I often make focaccia. And we put onions on it because we like onions on it. We
and
also
it's
put
delicious, yeah.
rosemary or olives, sometimes little tomatoes, something like that. So it's kind of like our base for ourselves, and it's very objective. Is like, can we make this better? It's also, though, a good base. We've talked about this in the Rome episode. Is like there's a chain called Alice, and they make they're just pizza taglio, and that's our sort of baseline of good. It's not amazing. It is not mind blowing, but it's good. And if you're gonna have one pizza in Rome before leaving, like pizza taglio,
and it's affordable,
yeah. But then it goes up from there. The pizzerium, the Bonci pizzerium, is amazing. It's phenomenal. It's also 2 or 3 times the price. And there's other pizzerias that are really good. So I think when we talk about like this place is good, we talked about this in the Florence episode and even in the Siena episode. I think for clarification, what we mean is we found this to be better than like good compared to our experience in the rest of Italy. And no, if you had to eat at one place basically, and then you're like, I get one meal.
I think it's also like, would we go back and have that?
That's a good point.
And that's what we recommend.
Yeah, and I think that's actually a great way of putting it. Would we go back? Would we like go back for that? I think isn't that the Michelin thing, right? It's like with 3 stars, you'd go out of your way for that. I mean, maybe not 3 stars, but definitely like 2 or 1.
Oh yeah, I think that's a Michelin thing. It's like once you have a star, people make that a destination.
Yeah, or at least it's like 3 stars is a destination. 1 star is worth the stop, I think.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh.
So it's like.
That's good to know. I didn't realize that.
Apparently, they had it. Like I think the original one was like, I think in this 2 stars, it was like if it's X amount of time away, it's worth the stop. So, without further ado.
So your favorite focaccia place, our favorite focaccia place is, what is it? Pizza e Faina.
Fine, yeah. And I wish I could tell you what Faina meant.
Does it not mean farina in dialect?
Honestly, it could be, because a lot of, if you'll go to Cinque Terre, and if you kind of look at all of the signs, a lot of them are in dialect, and I have no idea what any of it means. So it could totally be that it's...
My guess is that faina means farina, which means flour, but that is totally guesswork.
It also could be like a dish they do. Like we do pizza, and it could be like, it could be a local word for focaccia, because they do sell pizza and focaccia there.
That's a good point. That's another good guess.
So that's my favorite. It's weird, like on Google Maps, they have like not good reviews. Part of it, though, is a lot of people get pizza there. And I gotta be honest, this is just us, I think. We are very hesitant to buy pizza outside of Naples.
Pizza meaning like pizza a taglio? Or
no,
pizza?
this is like pizza. They have like circles of pizza.
Oh yeah, I would not get that in Cinque Terre.
Yeah,
it's from Naples, y'all.
Yeah, it's also I don't know. It's a whole thing. We have a whole. I don't know. We have a very strong feelings on pizza.
We really do.
But it's kind of that thing. Like it's almost like focaccia is from there. Pizza is very much not from there. And yeah, they put tomato sauce and cheese on it, but it doesn't really go as well with focaccia as like just olives or just, sometimes they just do like a cracked egg on it. And they do weird things, but it's not, I think they're always sure to make sure it marries well with the focaccia, with the bread. Sauces, as much as we've seen, are very not common on focaccia.
Yeah.
It's not that typical to find as, pesto maybe, but like something like tomato sauce is not that common to find on focaccia. So that being said, a lot of the reviews I saw that were bad for it had the pizza. I would not recommend the pizza. It's kind of like, I don't know. I don't recommend burgers when you come to Italy, because it's like they could be amazing burgers, but especially if you're American, like I'm willing to put money on the fact that you have a much better burger place in your town than you're going to find in most of Italy.
Yes.
So kind of the same sort of feeling for us, but the focaccia there is fantastic. We got the onion focaccia, but there's all varieties from plain to olives to onions to tomatoes, etc., etc. I believe they also have a gluten-free option. Most of the ones we're going to talk about do have a gluten-free. There must be, my guess is honestly, tourists come in are gluten-free, and people are like, that's just money lying around that we could make.
Yeah.
So most of these places do have a gluten-free option. if you basically need gluten-free. So our favorite focaccia place was the Pizza Faina. Second is the Panificio Rossi, and it's like the actual name is like Panificio Rossi di Baldinelli Roberta. It's quite a long name, but I call it Panificio Rossi because it's much easier to say. And it is a bakery and like pastry shop, but a bready pastry shop.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not like the fine pastries we talked about.
Oh yeah.
It's the sort of classic pastries, and they have this amazing. I have no idea what it is. It's not really Italian, I doubt it, but it's this fried dough that they cut open and then shove it with cream.
Well, it's like the what is it in Rome? The
Maritozzo con panna?
It's like a maritozzo con panna but fried. It's not the same
instead of using
bread,
baked brioche, they use like
fried donut-y.
Well, they're in Ostia, outside of Rome. There's this Krapfen place, Krapfen.
Where's Krapfen from?
I want to say like Austria or Germany. I don't know. On the Google Maps, they actually had it listed, but I'm not entirely sure where it's from. But essentially, it's like a donut that's fried, a whole donut. There's no holes. It's like an entire donut fried, and then usually like the one in Ostia had like some sort of cream and stuff in it. But this one was kind of cut in half, and basically it was like sort of a whipped cream, a whipped custard type thing. Delicious, phenomenal. If you're there, 100% try it. They had a variety of other pastries, including apparently gluten-free croissants. But they also have focaccia. And I think that's where we got our sort of neck and neck. Maybe a little bit, like we like the other one a little bit more because it's almost more oily, which is a huge part of focaccia. As it should be. It's a very...
not like dripping in oil, by the way, but the bread is oily rather than like dry.
It's a high hydration dough. Like if you're ever baking bread, like and you look at those things, it's supposed to be very high in hydration, as well as a pretty healthy amount of olive oil in it. And yeah, it's not dripping in oil, but it's like essentially even when you're done baking it and you take it out of the oven, especially at home, there should still be oil in the divots that you made. It's not supposed to absorb everything, so it's supposed to be quite a oily bread, and that's I think why we like the other one, Pizza Faina, a little bit more for focaccia.
Yes.
But for pastries, for anything like that, for something yummy, sweet, delicious, could not recommend the Panificio Rossi more.
Yeah, it was delicious.
Fantastic. What else we got there?
Il pescato cucinato.
Yeah, we didn't. So we're vegetarian. We did not try this one.
Yes.
But this seemed to be like the most talked about.
It's a little fried fish and fried octopus, fried seafood.
Yeah.
And French fries.
Alice, sardines, whole fish. And I want to say it's cheap in the sense that like, well, it depends. It's cheap based on location, I guess, but it's like you can get like a little fry basket, a small one for like €7 and the large one for like 12. So for like, comparing it to something like Southern Italian prices, that's insane. That's so expensive. But for Cinque Terre, that's really quite reasonable because a lot of the dinners are, like €20 for a plate of like aglio olio.
We didn't go to the more like sit down restaurant situations because it was just so expensive to eat there because they're used to tourists and it's 100% tourist restaurant to tourist prices. Yeah,
and that's what it's a little bit difficult. Like and we've talked about that right in the beginning was, staying in La Spezia, staying in Levanto, staying somewhere else. And that is another reason to stay in La Spezia. There is food available for people who are basically living in La Spezia making a minimum wage. So it's like, there's, all of Italy has basic food available for people who live there and make minimum wage. It's just Cinque Terre is not necessarily maybe one of those places in the sense that everywhere we found to eat was just like, oh, so this is going to be like €80 or €70 for three people, which up until then we were keeping it like 40 for three people. Yeah, we were. I was just going to add that, like you just said, we're not vegetarian, but obviously all of this area is on the coast. And I really do recommend if you are in La Spezia, if you are staying anywhere along the coast up there, if you eat seafood, that's the place to get seafood. I think we mentioned in the Florence episode that people were trying to get, we overheard people trying to get local seafood in Florence, where there is no local seafood. It is, it has a river, but they're not getting fish from that river. Yeah, it's a landlocked city. Yeah, so if you're really wanting seafood, this is a great place to get it. Oh yeah, no, this is fantastic. Like anywhere in the coast, but obviously if you're only going to be in the north, that's a fantastic place to do it. Yeah. And I think that pretty much covers Rio Maggiore. I mean, it's hard. It's such a small place. There's stuff to do, but it really is one of those like you go for a day, maybe 2 days, and then you're like, oh, this was it. Nice.
Yeah, and that's not why they have hiking trails, but I think that's why so many people make use of the hiking trails is because it kind of becomes one extended destination when you walk from one town to the next.
Exactly. So starting on them, and we'll go through this quickly for any of you who are getting a bit fatigued.
I'm getting a bit fatigued.
I was thinking,
a snack.
I know, we haven't had lunch yet. It's almost 4.
I'm going to have some, it's not Parmesan. What is it?
Cheese?
Yeah. What's it called?
Well, Parmesan. You had me at the...
Okay, I'm going to have some Parmesan. It's called
you mean the other one, the one that didn't make it to the Parmesan cut?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Something Reggiano.
Right?
I don't know, y'all. I'm going to have some cheese in a minute. My brain's fading away. So let's talk about hiking.
Let's do it.
So there are 48 hiking trails in the Cinque Terre area, is what the official website says.
That's a lot. Okay.
It is. It's so many. But it's because they break them up into short stints.
Okay.
So the easiest one maybe, which I think is actually closed right now.
It's supposed to be closed until 2024, like June of 2024.
Oof, okay.
And it was closed we were there in September. It was closed as well. It's like essentially, unfortunately, there's like a lot of these lower trails, and they are quite susceptible to landslides.
Yes. So there's the blue trail it's in Italian called Sentiero Azzurro, and that is the trail which is fastest and goes along the coast, like you have sea views for most of the way. It's the lower trail, and it goes from Rio Maggiore all the way up to Monte Rosso al Mare, and I guess the most accessible and the most highly trafficked tourist trail, or it's not just tourists, but it's often tourists, is what is it called?
I think it's the Via dell'Amore.
Via dell'Amore, yeah.
It's like Street of Love.
And I say accessible because it's been paved and it's quite flat, and with even I think if you have mobility issues, you could walk that trail.
Yeah.
And it goes to the next town from Rio Maggiore to what's next?
Manarola.
Manarola, yes.
So it's supposed to. I think I read it was only like 8 meters difference on the whole thing. So they do try to keep it quite flat versus the other ones, which are like 900 meters difference.
Yes.
So that unfortunately it's closed now. And when we were there, it was closed much closer to Rio Maggiore than it was to Manarola. So you can kind of walk a bit from Manarola before you are asked to turn back. But there are some, even in Rio Maggiore, there's a little trail that goes from like the train station to the harbor, rather than so you can take the tunnel through the mountain, or you can take this trail that goes around the mountain along the coast. Mm-hmm. And they're both beautiful. I mean, you're just kind of getting, if it's a kind of a stormy day like when we were there, you're just getting hit with salt spray, and it's gorgeous, it's and it's like really wild. But if it's a nice day, then it's just this beautiful seaside walk. Mm-hmm. But of course, that's just for one town.
Yeah. And so like I said, we're not going to go into all the different trails, but if you are someone who enjoys walking and or hiking, there are many, many little short stints that you can do. You don't have to go from one town to the next. Although with the blue trail, the Sentiero Azzurro, it's only 4.5 to 5 hours to walk. It's
about like 11 kilometers or something. What is that, like 8 miles?
Yeah, it's like 11
miles?
or 12 kilometers, so it's like 7.5 miles.
Okay. And because we've read that people basically do that in a day. It requires a bit of fitness, but you can do it in a day. You can stop at all the towns. You can eat something, have something to drink, chill out, check out the vibe of the town, and then do another, little walk. Because even from Rio Maggiore to Manarola, if it were open, it's only about a half-hour walk.
Yeah, it's
if
quite
that
short.
on the Via dell'Amore. Mm-hmm. So it's, if by the time you're listening to this, or when you plan your trip for next summer maybe, if it's open, that's a phenomenal, just like, we just want to check out what another town here looks like. We're not gonna take a train down there, so might as well walk it.
Yes. And there are some great websites that I do suggest you looking at, only because we cannot constantly update you with what's closed and what's not. But because of the landslides and because of where the lower trail, the blue trail is, it just often gets hit by weather and landslides. So you can before you go on your trip, I do suggest you looking it up to see what's closed and what's open.
And if I'm not mistaken, you mentioned to me that the high trails are rarely closed. They're rarely hit by landslides or any other sort of natural.
Because they are high.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And so they're open like all of the year essentially, and are rarely impeded by weather.
Oh, that's nice. Okay.
Yeah. But they are much longer and more difficult, I would say. They're not for like the idle hiker. Most of them.
Sure. No, I mean they're based, like I mentioned, it's something like a 900 meters difference, and a lot of it happens, especially going to Monte Rosso al Mare. It's something like 300 meters down, just like straight down at the end.
That's crazy.
So it's a little bit of a I mean, which is down, but if you're starting at Monte Rosso al Mare, it's 300 meters straight up before you even start your hike.
Yeah, and thinking about difficult hikes and not, so like we don't like go on intense hikes, but we do go on like mountain walks, which are fairly intense.
Yeah.
And I always wear my Tevas, almost always. And you mentioned to me today that there's a fine if you are found on the trail, if you're walking any of the trails with flip-flops, sandals, or high heels. And that fine is anywhere from 50 euros to 2,500 euros.
Yeah, it's huge. Or it can be huge.
Yeah, it can be huge. And that 2,500 euros up to that point is if you get stuck or injured or are otherwise incapacitated, they're basically charging you the fees of what it takes to get like
equipment and people out there.
Yeah,
I guess.
exactly. Like the mountain safety, I don't remember what they're called. But yeah, like the national park assistance and stuff to come get you out of that situation that you've gotten yourself in with an appropriate footwear. So just to be safe, wear some hiking shoes, some tennis shoes. Don't get caught with flip-flops on the trail.
And we mentioned too, like the Via dell'Amore and stuff like that. You should be okay, especially the one like within Rio Maggiore. I mean, you know, if somebody's going to fine you for the one that's just from the train station to the harbor, it's a little like
I don't think they would.
Yeah. Even the one to Manarola, even if it's open, they say they will. Again, it's one of those things where it's super flat. It's like, I mean, almost, I don't want to jinx anybody, like almost impossible to get stuck. But it's because it's not really like, it's just kind of a sidewalk for half an hour is a good, good way to put it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's, just something to keep in mind is hiking shoes, tennis shoes. We can throw a link in the description to our Moose Jaw affiliate link if you want.
If you need some hiking shoes.
If you need some hiking shoes, helps out the channel. No, I think that's something, that's very good to keep in mind. As well as there are, for those of you who want to make the journey one way and then not to come back.
Or not walk back.
That's a good point. You do have to get, it's a little confusing. And this is why I think we recommend that you research. But you do have to pay to be on the trails, basically.
Mm-hmm.
And again, when I say the Via dell'Amore one, it
didn't look like people were getting like their tickets checked or anything. We were just walking around. I mean, whenever you and I walked,
it's just
that little
there's no one stopping you. There's no one walking up and down.
Walking the trail.
So don't like panic basically if you're on it without a ticket. However, you're supposed to get one that takes you either the sort of basically it's for the whole trip, and they're done by the day because most of these, apparently the short one, the blue trail, is supposed to be walked in a day, ideally. So they charge by the day. It's $7.50 for an adult. For the regular pass is what I'll call it, and it gets you basically. The important thing is it gets you access to the buses, the shuttle buses that run between the towns, and it gets you access to the bathrooms at the train station. So you have to like pee or something when you're on your walk. You pop in a train station, you pee, no problem.
Yeah, once you have the card, the bathroom is free. If you don't have the card and you're just a regular person at the train station bathrooms are, I think, €1.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, though, it's not a terrible idea. Like, if you're like, I'm going to be peeing a lot on this trip.
Yeah, that's me and you. We always plan for bathrooms and what's the least expensive option.
Yeah. And then you can't share a pass, by the way. I just want to throw it out there. They do have your names on them, and you're going to be required to, well, let me rephrase this. You are required to put your name on it and then show that along with your ID if you get stopped. And there's a second pass, though.
Yeah, there's so the regular one is called the Cinque Terre trekking card, and then there's the Cinque Terre trekking plus Treno, right, card, and that's €18.20 as of our latest research, and it includes trains in the area from Levanto to La Spezia.
Yeah, no, so you basically can hop back and forth. And you can also, I mean, you can be a little cheeky about it if you want. You could take the 30-minute walk to Manarola, hop on a train. You're going to skip over a little bit one, but then you want to get out to like Monte Rosso al Mare, or maybe you want to stop in Vernazza. You know, you're just like,
Yeah, just hop around.
have a little day. I mean, basically, it's valid for the day once you validate it, but it doesn't seem to be only in one direction. So if you want to be a little...
Right, it's like a day pass.
Yeah, if you want to be a little cheeky, if you're like, I'm going to stop at all the towns, I'm going to do a little walking, I'm going to do a little this, a little that. Beautiful, beautiful option. Makes it a lot easier. And honestly, for any of you who are interested in walking, there's so many resources out there. We can try to link some in the description that at least help.
Yeah, let's do that.
That especially the ones that you can tell whether or not these trails are open.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because that's something too. If you're planning on a trip, like I 100% recommend that you double check that these trails are open. Because the big trail, the high trail, isn't necessarily from Rio Maggiore to Monte Rosso al Mare. It's from Porto Venere all the way to Levanto. So it's a little bit longer. It is not a day walk at all. It's a couple days walk.
Right.
And it doesn't, because it's in the mountains, it doesn't, I mean, there's a view of the sea the whole time pretty much. But you have to basically, getting off, like let's just say you were going to go from Porto Venere to Rio Maggiore, the turn off to Rio Maggiore, I guess, the fork in the trail is well above Rio Maggiore. So it's kind of like, it's not just like, oh, I'll just pop off. It doesn't go through the towns. It's very far away from the towns.
Right. Where the blue trail does
go through the towns.
essentially.
Yeah. So it's just something to keep in mind for those of you who are intrepid hikers and want to, show off, I guess, because the rest of us are just going to be staring at you with a Campari soda or something, going like, wow, that person is killing it.
Yeah, that would be me. I'm like, dang, look at that person so high
I wish
up there.
I could do that. What gives them the drive?
Sip, sip.
Sip.
Yeah, that's me sipping my drink from down below.
Like, well, they look very happy. So I think that's at least Cinque Terre in a nutshell. But getting there, you want to talk about getting there very briefly?
Yeah. So basically, you take if you're taking public transportation, you're going to go through La Spezia and then change trains.
Yes, always. There's no, as much as we found, and I could not find a single train, pretty much from anywhere that goes up the Cinque Terre coast. Almost all of them I found. I think all of them I found. And again, this might change on a seasonal thing. It might be a monthly thing. Who knows?
Right, but as we record,
it looks to be there is
a
train line that goes between La Spezia and Levanto, and it runs every I don't know, 20 minutes, 15
something
minutes?
like that, stopping at each of the cities along the Cinque Terre.
And honestly, if you are going to drive, I still 100% recommend the train because it's quite evocative, I guess. Like you're in this tunnel and it's just dark and and all of a sudden there's like this little glimmer of light because there's these little holes in the tunnel to see the ocean. And so you see for this brief second, you see the ocean and kind of before you realize it's the ocean, you're like, what is that? Is that the ocean? Are we almost there? And then you just come out of the tunnel and it's just ocean all in front of you. It's gorgeous.
It's beautiful. And we were on a pretty crowded train.
Oh, it was slammed. Yeah.
Full of tourists. But it was cool that we all, obviously we all noticed what was happening. So there's ooh,
yeah.
It was really
so
fun.
Nice just to kind of I don't know. I think that's how you want it to be, I guess. It's how you picture these things being. You're it's a seaside town. So of course the train's going to hit me right at the water. And we've been to seaside towns where the train's way over yonder. Yeah. Nowhere near the water. Couldn't even see it.
Maybe that's it, far in the distance. Maybe not. Something
and so
blue.
It was so nice just to be oh my God, we're here. This is amazing. So just for that effect alone, it's sort of we're going to talk about this in a Rome episode, but it's how I recommend, when you go to visit the Colosseum is to take the metro there because there's nothing like walking out of the metro station and just being oh my God, that's the Colosseum. That's insane. That's huge. When you walk to it from a distance, you're like, oh, that looks like the Colosseum. Mm-hmm. Totally different feeling.
Yes.
But getting there, La Spezia or Levanto, depending if you're coming from the north, you could probably come from Milan or Torino or something like that, Nice, if you will, and go to Levanto and switch there as well. Super simple. There's fast trains to La Spezia. It's a bustling city, so it's there's constant transportation. And
it's much more affordable than renting a car.
Yes,
because you have to pay to park in all of these towns, not in the towns, outside of the town, and then for the shuttle bus into town. So I just think it's a much better idea to take a train.
Definitely I Cannot recommend highly the train. Plus, it's a little more sustainable. I mean, a little bit was a lot more sustainable. And just be prepared that on the trains through Cinque Terre, you're going to be with a ton of tourists. And just sort of like be aware, because I mean, we were there in September, and the train to Rio Maggiore was slammed. It was just like,
it was that area of the country was the most crowded of all of the areas that we went to with my mom that time. Rome, Florence, Siena. I mean, we were mostly in the north, but that little pocket was packed.
So I cannot imagine how it looks in the summer when like all the Americans have their summers off. So it's something to keep in mind that like, you're going to be on these trains that have no assigned seating. You're probably going to be standing with your luggage. Don't panic. Don't worry. I mean, the ticket guy was coming around trying to get people's tickets, and we were all a little bit like, I mean, not like, it was just one of those things. I think it was like, as we were pulling into the station, the doors are opening. He's trying to stop people to get their ticket. And it's like,
that was odd.
Yeah. We're like, dude, we're here. This is Italy. We came all the way here from like Florence and no one checked our ticket. And now you're checking our ticket. Like, it's a little
that was
late.
Weird.
Yeah. So I don't know if it's also like people hop the trains, try to do it for free. It felt a little bit just, don't let those things throw you off. It's a nightmare, mayhem, madness, and then
chaos.
You see this beautiful ocean, and it's like nothing else even matters. It's just beautiful. And again, do some research for sure on like wherever you're going to book through Airbnb, booking, anything like that. Just do some research. Do not assume that any place has an elevator.
Yes.
And I mean that goes for all of Italy. I think that's something your mom mentioned. She basically said, I literally assumed every place would have an elevator because I'm American, of course.
And, well, even I do sometimes because I think I'm so used to staying in Rome when we, fly out. We often stay near the train station. And most of those hotels, even if they're old, they have, that retrofitted old style elevator in the center of the stairwell.
Which is not for a wheelchair. It's for like a person or two people, and sometimes a person and a box or a luggage.
Yes.
So to be clear,
they're quite tiny. Yes.
Even if it says elevator, I strongly recommend if you need an elevator to double check. Contact the host, contact the person. Ask me to send you some pictures. What does this look like? What's the weight rating on it? That kind of stuff. Because some of the ones are, I'm like 6'4", I think, and about. I hover between 200 and 250 pounds, depending on time of year and how much I'm eating. And no, I've been on some elevators that I'm like, ooh, rated for 130 kilos. Like, if this elevator is having a bad day, then I'm
also having a bad day.
Yeah, then I'm also having a bad day. So that's just something to keep in mind is, it's just don't, basically it's like a warning, maybe not even a warning, a suggestion to not consider elevators in Italy as we do in the States or as, I mean.
Yeah, they're not necessarily standard.
And in the UK, I think we found more, at least, maybe not everywhere, but a lot of the places had more standard elevators and that's an elevator. Like, so I think that's something if you're listening from the UK, I'm assuming Australia is the same way in the sense that there's a lot more sort of modern elevators. Speaking to the English speaking audience, I guess, because I honestly, if the rest of the world, I have no idea. I'm assuming it's like Italy where if they can build an elevator there, they will, but if they can't, they won't kind of thing. That's just something to keep in mind as you're booking, as you're checking around, checking properties. Is that everything on Cinque Terre?
I think that's it.
Beautiful. Okay. Well, if you'd like to support the channel, as we mentioned earlier, we have an affiliate link to house sitting, or trusted house sitters below. It's really just, I mean, if you listen to our house sitting episodes, we gush about house sitting. We do really love it. I cannot recommend it strongly enough. It's just such a beautiful way to kind of learn a place, be with the people, be in a neighborhood.
Immerse yourself more than you can in other ways,
And you might not, honestly, you're probably not going to find one in Cinque Terre, but it's not remotely out of the realm possibility to find one in the Ligurian Coast. Genoa has house sits. We've seen a lot of them.
Which is an easy day trip. From Genoa to Cinque Terre.
Yeah, so if you're looking at, like, if you have a very relaxed plan, if you're like, you know what, I might just, like, see if we can spend a week, or not a week, a month even. Because the house sits do range, by the way, from a few nights all the way to usually like 3 months, because that's the extent of the tourist visa. Most of the houses that we've done are a minimum of a month, just because we like to really be in a place and really get to know a place before leaving. We try not to do the ones that are a day or two. But
we like to settle in.
We really like to settle in. Yeah, we don't treat it like so much like a hotel as we do as like a sublet, I think is how we treat it.
Yeah, well, I think we treated it as if like we're staying at our aunt or uncle's house.
Yeah, that's a good
with
point.
A lot of respect, but it's not our home, but we do treat it like respectfully, like someone else's home, and we settle into it as if it's our.
Yeah, exactly. Like, not like we're not like painting walls or anything. We just mean like settle. Like we just nest a little bit, and they're like, oh, we got to go soon. So in the description, Trusted House Sitters link. It is a little bit pricey at the beginning, but it's if you do the math though, genuinely, like especially for some of these places, 180 a night in Rome in the summer is not like outside the realm of possibility, even for not good not good Airbnbs or hotels. So 180 for the year for Trusted House Sitters is sort of a phenomenal rate.
Yeah.
And if you want to support us, that's there. We're also going to throw that Moose Jaw link in the description. Why not? If you need some hiking shoes or some hiking pants or some, literally anything outdoorsy, that's there too. Otherwise,
we're also going to put the links for finding the trails.
Links for finding the trails and whether or not they're closed and open. And I might, if I can remember to, and I should remember to, I have a very good memory most of the time. Not when it comes to cheese, by the way. I'm still kind of trying to figure out what this. It wasn't Parmesan, right? It's the other one.
I am so perplexed. I eat this cheese all the time,
I know.
and I go to our cheese guy every Friday. I'm like, this is the cheese that I want.
It's like total spacing. It's like one of those things that's like with Parmesan cheese that didn't make the cut to be called Parmesan or Parmigiano Reggiano, so they call it. I'm trying to trick myself into remembering it. Didn't work. Anywho, yeah, we're going to put those links in the description. I might do a little Google Map link to the, basically the focaccia, the panificio, and the fish place. Please like and rate and follow and subscribe and
all the good things.
If there's a good button,
we love it.
That'd be amazing. We would love it. It's so helpful.
And recommend us to a friend if you want.
Definitely recommend. If you know somebody going to Italy and you're like, you know what, these two voices are not that bad. They're not grating me terribly. Then definitely recommend us to a friend. And if you have any questions, as always, you can contact us through onlyabag.com, our website. And we're happy to answer questions. I realize people have asked questions. It's actually been really kind of cool because we're like, oh, you're listening? You heard me? You have questions?
We love connecting with whoever you are.
So if you have questions, just let us know. We're more than happy to answer them. Until then.
Yeah, we'll talk at you next time.
We'll talk at you next time for our Perugia episode. That was we didn't really spin the dial on this one. We just sort of like, that's the Rio Maggiore.
Well, it's from the north. I like going north to south.
Yeah, okay. But I think it's probably the last north place we'll go to. Yeah.
Yeah, it is.
So it's Perugia next, and then maybe back down to Rome, and then on to ye old southern Italy. So
yeah, I'm excited.
Until next time, we hope you enjoyed this episode, and we will talk at you later.
Yeah, thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening.